Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Rose Writes and I write and narrate Miraculous Ladybug fanfiction. Back by popular demand, A Miraculous Search. This is Season 1. There will definitely be more parts, but I wanted to include this for those of you that haven't seen any of the series. This stunning artwork is a commission by the ever-so-talented Jade Carol on Instagram. Their links will be in the description box below. Now then, please enjoy A Miraculous Search. Season 1. Chapters 1 through 6. Chapter 1. Marinette Dupen Chang, 21 years old. Well, that's it. Marinette held the final box of contents of memories from her childhood bedroom. She sat the box down as she plopped herself on the chaise-longue, admiring the pink walls that never felt too childlike. So many memories. So many people had come and gone helping her pack. But today was the day. The end of an era. A single tear silently rolled down her face as she picked up the last box, which held probably the most important thing she'd ever owned. The miracle box. Some blankets surrounded it, not to seem suspicious if opened by someone else. She wiped her face as the familiar creak of the trapdoor notified her that someone was there. "Hi, are you ready to go?" Marinette didn't meet his loving gaze. "Yeah, I guess so." As if rejecting her words, the tears flowed. "I'm just really going to miss this place, that's all." She collapsed into her now-fiancé's chest. Adrien was no longer the small boy he had been when he gave her a promise ring at 15. He had grown. They both have. He was just over 6 feet tall, while Marinette seemed stuck at 5'2". But her growth had been more in personal development. Being the new guardian has proved to be a challenging task. But Adrien shared in the responsibility. He patted her head, attempting to comfort her, but it felt like he was treating her like a little kid. "We're only moving down the street. You can come back anytime you want." "You're right." He wiped the tears from his beautiful fiancé's bluebell eyes. "You're beautiful, you know. Mascara stains and all." He teased as he wiped her cheek with his sweater sleeve. She laughed through the remaining sobs. "Whatever. We better go. If we're late to the rehearsal dinner, Alia will never forgive me." "Please, m'lady. We're the guests of honor. There'd be no party if it weren't for us." The striking blonde smirked at her with mischief in his eyes. "Have you met Alia? Yes, I'll be the bride, but she's the maid of honor, so basically whatever she says goes. Remember when you were late to your tux fitting?" Marinette recalled when Alia chastised him for being 2 minutes late for the entire evening and nearly every day since. And that was 3 months ago. Adrien chuckled. "Yeah, you're right. Come on, Mare." He reached out for the cardboard box containing the kwamis. Marinette left the bakery for the last time as a single lady. "Marinette Elizabeth Agreste! Where have you been? It's 5:59. I've been waiting!" Alia sang as she ushered Marinette into the changing area. "Why are you full-naming me? Also, I'm not married." Marinette refused to go any further and crossed her arms, looking smug. The maid of honor's demeanor changed from slightly terrifying to a gossiping schoolgirl. "Not married yet, you mean?" "I just wanted to try it out. How does it make you feel?" She squealed. Marinette looked in the mirror as Alia placed a string of pearls around the bride-to-be's neck. "It feels like if I could tell my 14-year-old self that I would be a day away from marrying Adrien and Marinette, she would laugh in my face." Marinette put her hand to her neckline, looking at the pearls, recognizing them as the one her mother wore on her wedding day. Tears filled her eyes. No, I promised I wouldn't cry." She tilted her head back, blinking ferociously and fanning the tears from her made-up eyes. And after you went through so much trouble to do my makeup. She giggled softly. Alia pulled a tissue from her bra. I figured you would need this today. Marinette made a grossed-out face. Ew, Alia! I'm not interested in your boob sweat. She laughed and pushed the tissue back at her best friend. Oh, please! Just take it and say thank you. She thrust it back at Marinette and performed final touches on her makeup. You look perfect. Now it was Alia's turn to hold back tears. Marinette stood facing Alia in an ivory tea-length dress. The dress was made up of lace and was cinched tightly at the waist with a diamond belt. It wasn't quite as extravagant as her wedding dress, but it was beautiful nonetheless. Stop it, Alia! You can't cry or I'm gonna... Tears choked her throat and no more words came. The two girls gathered in a hug, saying nothing. Their friendship had spanned several years and had led to this momentous occasion. For some reason, Marinette had been fearful of the toasts. Alia, Adrien, and Nino knew her better than anyone else in the world. What stories would they choose to share? The few times Marinette had been drinking underage at Alia's house when her parents were away? Tales of Marinette sneaking over to Adrien's house as Ladybug to, Oh my gosh. Alia was the first to speak. Okay, Marinette. She will probably just share some simple, generic story. And nothing to worry about. She opened her mouth in hesitance, and then a beautiful monologue spilled out. I met Marinette when I was 14 on my very first day of school. I was new and had no friends. But I knew she was something special when I met her. She had this big heart for others and for helping. She's proven that time and time again. When I first found out she was dating Adrien, it just made sense. It clicked. I know this is cliché, but I have never met two people more right for each other. They complement each other in a way you wouldn't understand unless you truly knew them. She held up a glass of champagne. I guess what I'm trying to say is, I wish you both a lifetime of happiness and adventures. Glasses clinked and people cheered. Several other speeches followed. The bride's parents, Nino, Adrien's best man. Gabriel aggressed, albeit through Natalie's iPad as usual. Even Chloe had some kind words to spare. In her life, Marinette thought she had known perfection so many times before. But she was wrong. This was perfect. This life she was creating with Adrien in the small apartment they would share. But nothing lasts forever. And perfect is never really perfect. Chapter 2. Today's the day! Marinette, get up, get up! Alia ran to the guest room of her apartment and pounced on the bride-to-be, stripping the covers from the bed. Marinette threw a pillow over her head and moaned. Alia! I'm the bride! The wedding can't start until I get there anyway. Can't I afford to sleep in a little bit? She turned over on her stomach with a force strong enough to knock Alia off the bed. Marinette, soon to be aggressed! Get your butt out of bed! Alia paced back and forth, Marinette trying to ignore her. We have to do your hair and makeup, and all of the bridesmaids need to get their hair done as well. It'll be fun, I promise. When she didn't respond, Alia sighed heavily and thought, I didn't want to have to do this on your wedding day, Dupeng Cheng, but you give me no choice. Alia, being the feisty redhead she was, grabbed her stubborn best friend by the ankles, dragging her out of bed as Marinette clawed the mattress, desperate not to leave its warm embrace. She fell with a thud on the floor, and Alia landed in her lap. Marinette stood with a grumble, helping Alia to her feet. Hey, don't be mad at me, girl. You brought this on yourself, Alia said as the girls went into the dining room. Marinette muttered, Yeah, whatever. but stopped in her tracks as she saw the feast Nino had prepared. "Breakfast is served," Nino declared, bowing deeply. The girls giggled at his efforts to sound fancy. "Thanks, Nino. I didn't know you could cook," Marinette teased. Since graduating, Marinette had gotten a lot closer with Nino as he and her best friend were living together. Marinette stayed over at least once a week, sometimes more. "Since it's your wedding day, I decided to pull out all the stops." He winked at them and pulled down 3 plates from the cabinet, dressing them with several different breakfast foods. "If I eat any more, I may not be able to fit into my dress," Marinette stated as she continued taking more bites of her food. Nino chuckled, checking his watch. "Oh man, I need to go. Gotta meet Adrien at the hair salon. Bye, babe. Bye, Mare." He rushed out the door as both girls exchanged goodbyes after him. "So tell me," Alia started with her mouth full of quiche, "are you nervous?" "Honestly, I thought I would be, but I'm not. In a way, I feel like my entire life has led up to this moment, you know? And there's nothing more I want than to be with Adrien. I love him so much. I'm just excited," she said as she looked at her plate, contemplating taking another bite, but decided against it. Alia smiled warmly. She remembered all of the times Marinette felt so heartbroken because she thought Adrien didn't like her. All of the times Marinette said she would confess to Adrien but was too shy. Alia knew what she meant. Marinette deserved a happily ever after with the perfect guy. Her maid of honor took her hand gently. "I couldn't be happier for you. This day is going to be perfect." "How do I look?" Marinette did a spin, and tears filled the eyes of her mother and best friend. Marinette's dark hair cascaded in waves past her shoulders, complete with one simple fishtail braid in the back. Her dress was embellished with lace around the shoulders and the hem with a full princess tulle skirt. The dress had a sweetheart neckline emphasizing Marinette's décolletage. "Like a princess," Sabine uttered before collapsing onto her daughter. "She's right," Alia said as she went in for a group hug. As her mother left, Alia's expression turned serious. "I know the tradition is to have something blue, but I found this at a jewelry store and I thought you needed it." Alia placed a delicate-looking box in Marinette's hands. It was a cream white with a silver bow tying it together. She gingerly opened it, and inside was a bright red ladybug charm on a silver chain. It had small black diamonds as spots. Marinette held it up in front of her, staring at it. She didn't realize that tears were forming in her eyes, which was bad news for her mascara. "Oh, no, you don't. We just finished your makeup. You can cry later." Alia was attempting to keep her own composure. "It's beautiful, Alia. Thank you. It's perfect." Marinette smiled in return and turned around so Alia could place the necklace on her. "It's almost time. Are you ready?" Alia asked, holding both of the bride's manicured hands. She nodded slightly, grinning from ear to ear. The music began to swell as Marinette hiked up the stairs, her wedding dress train billowing behind her. The wedding party was already making their way to the front of the hotel ballroom, couple after couple. Before walking up to the double doors, her father, Tom, looped a bear-like arm through hers, saying, "I'm so proud of you. No matter what, you'll always be Daddy's little girl." His daughter wiped the river streaming from her father's eyes with a handkerchief in his jacket pocket. "Always, Dad." She held back her own tears as she turned to face forward. The door swung open to greet her, and the crowd stood in unison. And there he was, the love of her life staring back at her, with tears brimming in his own eyes. His usually messy blonde hair was parted on the side, slick to stay in place. This was the same boy she fell in love with all those years ago. Oh, how fortunate he felt to have the man of her dreams. As Marinette walked down the aisle, Adrien's breath caught in his throat. She looked ethereal, shrouded in lace and beauty. Her eyes sparkled beneath her long lashes, with the biggest smile displayed on her face. As she finished the long walk to the front of the ballroom, she placed a kiss on her father's cheek, then took the hands of her beloved. "You look beautiful, milady," he whispered in her ear after kissing her forehead. "You clean up well yourself," she joked. A Cheshire cat grin spread across his face. Andre Bourgeois, mayor of Paris, performed the wedding ceremony. It was touching. He told stories of the bride and groom throughout their youth. "Now the lovely couple would like to exchange vows," Andre said, looking first at Adrien. "Marinette Dupin Chang, I love you more than I ever thought possible. You're my best friend, my partner, my family, and my everything. I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with you. And I swear I will do everything in my power to make you the happiest woman alive." He spoke with sincerity, blinking tears from his eyes. Adrien gently stroked her hands as he spoke. From behind her, Alia nudged Marinette in the back to hand her a tissue in case she started weeping. She spoke barely loud enough that if you weren't paying attention, you'd miss it. "Adrien Agreste, you are, without a doubt, the most amazing person I've ever met. You are kind and selfless. You loved me even when I couldn't find the strength to love myself. I am so lucky to have you in my life. I will love you forever with all my heart." She somehow made it through without completely bursting into tears. Then, after they exchanged rings, Andre said the words the crowd had been waiting for. "Adrien, you may now kiss the bride." With a familiar wink, Adrien dipped Marinette low in a sweet embrace and a lingering kiss, just like in all of the best rom-coms. They would cherish this moment forever. "Mr. and Mrs. Agreste, everyone!" The mayor and minister bellowed through the hall. The couple's friends and family erupted into applause. They stood and faced their audience, all smiling, some crying, some even doing some catcalls, though that was mostly just Alia. The two sauntered proudly back up the aisle, only to be stopped abruptly by the double doors swinging open dramatically. The room fell cold and silent, as a tall, dark figure blocked their exit. "Ladybug, Cat Noir, it's been too long." Chapter 3. Hawkmoth. At the wedding? This had to be some kind of nightmare. But it wasn't. And he knew their identities. But how? They had been so careful. Marinette had little time to contemplate the logistics before noticing a black pair of glasses on Hawkmoth's face that were unmistakably the Horse Miraculous. A gasp slipped through her lips. She whispered, "Adrien, the Horse Miraculous, look!" He stared in disbelief and replied, "Then that means the miracle box." Adrien didn't need to finish his statement because they both knew. If Hawkmoth had the Horse Miraculous, that probably meant he had all of the Kwamis, except for Plag, Tiki, Fluff, and Trix, as they never left their holders. "What's wrong? Surprised to see me?" "I was a little hurt that I wasn't invited." The villain feigned sadness. Then a cackle erupted from him, breaking the silence of the room. "We have to transform," Adrien hissed at his new bride. She was still clutching his arm, both of their postures rigid. Marinette stole a glance at her wide-eyed Kwami, who shook her head. "I'm sorry, Tiki," Marinette mouthed. Hawkmoth knew their identities and revealed them to everyone here. So why bother hiding? Especially when they could transform now and save some time. It had been a while since the couple had transformed. Accumatizations had been down, and with planning for the wedding, they didn't have much chance. But today, their alter egos would be their only hope. Spots on!
Claws out!
Their friends and family shielded their eyes from the glow of the double transformation and sat with their mouths agape. Everyone, you need to move! Now! We'll be okay! Ladybug instructed as the wedding guests began to vacate. 2 young women stood beside the superheroes, ready to defend. Alex, Alia, you need to go! We can handle this! Cat Noir shouted as he drew his staff from behind him. I'm not going anywhere. You can't always do things by yourself. Tricks, let's pounce! Standing beside them was the Fox Miraculous holder, Rena Rouge. Yeah, Alex exclaimed. I never get to go on missions, and I think you could use all the help you can get. Fluff, clockwise! Having more of you doesn't make a difference. I will be triumphant! Hawkmoth hissed, and dashed forward leading with his staff. It was bizarre that he was alone. But whilst fighting him, Ladybug noticed he wasn't just wearing the horse and the butterfly miraculous, but the peacock jewel as well. Oh no. Many strategic dodges later, and Cat Noir used his cataclysm. Hawkmoth, seeing an opening, grabbed his arm, holding it to the superhero's body, with another arm gripping his throat. No! Ladybug screamed, but froze in place with a hand extended. Another evil laugh left Hawkmoth. Do I need to explain it to you, Ladybug? You and your friends, give me your miraculous. Then he walks away unharmed. Don't listen to him, Ladybug, Cat managed to choke out. I can't let anything happen to you. I'm sorry. She looked to her sides to find Bunnix and Rena Rouge looking just as distraught and helpless as she felt. Ladybug reached up for her miraculous just as Bunnix whipped her umbrella weapon around her and yelled, Burrow! Then appeared behind Hawkmoth to whack him on the head. He dropped Cat Noir, who fell to the ground gasping for air, being careful not to touch anything with his right hand that still lit up with his cataclysm. Voyage! Hawkmoth growled as he lunged for Cat Noir, dragging him through the portal. Then they disappeared. Once again, Cat Noir was in the evil clutches, struggling to free himself. The villain seemed focused on Cat, but no one knew why. You got me here, Cat gasped, with Hawkmoth's thumb placed firmly on his trachea. Now, what do you want? Foolish boy, you are the bait. He dangled Cat Noir over the railing of the Eiffel Tower, still holding his cataclysm hand. And when you transform back, you'll be helpless. With a mighty pull of his right arm, Cat Noir took a cataclysm directly in the chest. He let out a pained scream as he transformed back into Adrien, falling unconscious. Chapter 4. All the air escaped Ladybug's lungs as she saw the love of her life dangling from the Eiffel Tower, by none other than Hawkmoth. Rage filled her core. This wasn't happening. She landed harshly on the building, the cold air whipping her face. Rena Rouge and Bunnix trailed behind her. Stop! Please! Why are you doing this? Is the miraculous really worth this? Killing someone? Tears filled Ladybug's eyes, but she tried to hold back. She couldn't do this now. In the end, it will all be worth it. To bring her back, I would do anything. You wouldn't understand. Hawkmoth's gaze never broke away from the unconscious Adrien, or seemingly unconscious. A voice ripped through his throat, catching the entire party off guard. Claws out! Cataclysm! Cat Noir appeared weak, but he wouldn't give up. As long as he was living, he would fight. His right hand was dangerous, glowing a sinister black. If Cat was scared, he didn't show it. He looked more angry than anything. He held his cataclysm hand up to Hawkmoth's chest. With a rasp in his voice, he said, "One wrong move, and I'll end you. Right here, right now." An unfazed Hawkmoth cackled, which echoed through the metal structure. "Voyage," the villain said simply. He stuck his free hand through the portal and pulled out something that made everyone audibly gasp. The miracle box. Hawkmoth's mouth twisted in a devilish smile as he saw the expression on everyone's face. That was precisely the reaction he'd hoped for. "Hawkmoth!" A roar escaped Cat Noir as he reached forward to touch him. In that same instant, Hawkmoth put the miraculous box in Cat Noir's path, so his hand collided with it. They all watched in silence as it turned into dust, blowing away in the wind. Cat Noir's hand was still raised as he stared at it, turning it over. How could someone so good be capable of such destruction? All eyes were filled with tears now except for Cat Noir and Hawkmoth. They seemed to be in a hostile staring match. "How could you?" Cat Noir growled. "Stupid boy! If you would just give me your miraculous, we could put an end to this." Was this a game to Hawkmoth? If he truly wanted Cat Noir gone, he'd throw him to his death. There was nothing stopping him. He must have bigger plans. I have to stop him. Never! A smirk crossed his face. In one fluid motion, Cat reached to grab the butterfly miraculous. A purple flash lit up the Eiffel Tower. Now, instead of being held by Hawkmoth, when his eyes focused on the figure in front of him, it was his father. It was Gabriel Agreste. "Father! You! How could you?" Tears flowed freely down his masked face. "Adrien, I had no choice." Gabriel, still holding his son's arm, looked down dejectedly. "There's always a choice, and you chose wrong." Without another word, Cat Noir thrashed around in his father's grip, which slowly loosened and then released. "Adrien, no!" Gabriel reached over the railing of the tower to no avail. His son was falling rapidly, still in shock. "This can't be happening," Ladybug thought, slightly in denial. The tears overflowed from her eyes. Ladybug lunged headfirst from the tower, fingers outstretched. She desperately tried to reach him. When she grabbed her yo-yo to assist her, she threw it and missed. She couldn't see clearly with the tears distorting her vision. She tried again. Another miss. "Adrien, no! Almost there!" She was so close. So very close. Close enough for her fingers to barely graze his. But it wasn't enough. He fell to the concrete below, his head bouncing slightly. His transformation released with a familiar light, and there was the blonde boy laying, looking broken in every way. "No, Adrien," she whispered as she held his barely breathing body. "I'm sorry. So sorry that I couldn't save you. I love you." She was hunched over him, tears streaming down onto his chest. The world fell silence. Police cars and ambulances screamed, surrounding them. But she heard nothing. Nothing except the shallow sound of his breathing. Then, with one last gasp for air on that cold Paris street, in the arms of his new wife. Adrien took his last breath. His spotted bride hid her face in his shirt, doing all he could not to scream, but the pain was too much. He couldn't be gone. Their life together was supposed to begin today. Yet it was over nearly as soon as they said "I do." Adrien was only 22. She couldn't do this without him. Ladybug felt dizzy as she spiraled into depression. She lost everything in a matter of minutes. She held his hand, twisting his miraculous. With most of the miraculous destroyed, she took a gulp and removed his miraculous slowly. She felt a stabbing pain in her heart. Paramedics rushed to his side to tend to him. The heartbroken hero held the ring in one hand and Plague in the other, who looked up at her with sad, glowing eyes. She didn't feel like a hero. She had failed Adrien. In the end, she wasn't fast enough. And now, she wasn't strong enough to withstand this gut-wrenching pain. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Rena Rouge and Bunnix approaching with former Hawkmoth Gabriel Agreste. No, Ladybug thought, I'm not a failure. This is all his fault. The two young ladies escorted him into a police car. Ladybug briskly walked over, leaning in the car, and pulled Gabriel to be mere inches from her face. Gabriel was the first to speak. It's over, Ladybug. I've killed my own son, and now I'm going to jail. It's all over now. I tried to save my family, but I destroyed everything. His voice was barely a whisper, his eyes glossy from the tears he had shed. Save his family? Adrien was his family, and he killed him! Before Ladybug could interrogate him further, a man approached him, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. Excuse me, miss. We have to take him now. The officer looked regretful having to talk to her after this tragedy. She didn't meet his eyes. Fine. She released Gabriel's jacket as she turned away. The emergency vehicles were subsiding. The streets were empty. She felt more alone than ever. Ladybug could no longer stand. She sank to her knees, the cobblestone feeling rough as she landed. Spots off, she muttered. Tiki flew to hug her holder's cheek as fresh tears fell. Beside her, Alex and Alia kneeled, their arms around Marinette as she sobbed and sobbed. The world felt darker without Adrien in it. Her sunshine had faded, turning her world to gray. There was no happiness left for her. Not without him. For the first time, Marinette didn't have the answer. It seemed as if her luck finally ran out. Chapter 5. Marinette hadn't left her house in several weeks. Bags and tears lined her dark blue eyes, her face constantly drained of color. It'd been nearly a month since Adrien's death. It still didn't feel real. Her phone lived on silent as she attempted to block out the rest of the world. Everyone understood. They gave her space, which Marinette was thankful for. The only beings she had talked to were Tiki and Plague. None of this makes sense. I've been racking my brain for weeks, and I can't think of any reason why Hawkmoth would want to kill his own son. Marinette said, not directly to anyone, mostly just thinking aloud.
Marinette, I got to see Gaby up close. He isn't a picnic to be around.
Plague indulged in his breakfast, consisting of nothing but camembert, and a lot of it. Yeah, but murder? Marinette simply couldn't understand that. There was no excuse.
You have every right to be angry, Marinette. We are too. Do you think that maybe this was all an accident? A really terrible accident? Yes, Gabriel Agreste is an awful person, but maybe his intention wasn't murder.
Tiki was sweet. She always wanted to believe in the good inside others, even people like Hawkmoth. Maybe. I don't know, Tiki. Marinette turned in her bed, unable to get comfortable. Adrien was his only family. I just don't understand. She closed her eyes, hoping to be taken by sleep, until a thought popped into her mind. Gabriel said he did all of this to save his family, but he ended up killing the last of his family. Unless... That's it. Killing Adrien wasn't intentional. It was a means to an end. A way to get their miraculous for good. Marinette shot up out of bed, startling the near-sleeping Kwamis. Her face was drenched with sweat, breathing labored.
What's the big idea?
Plag moaned, rubbing his large eyes. Emily. It was all Marinette could say. She was alive. She didn't know how she knew, but she was certain. Emily Agreste was alive, and Hawkmoth's ultimate plan was to save her by making a wish. Of course.
Emily?
Tiki chirped through a yawn. Adrien's mother. She's alive. I need to speak to Hawkmoth. You want to do what? Alia shrieked, pounding her fists into Marinette's kitchen table. Alex sat in the seat beside her, leaning back in her chair, feet on the table. All of the Kwamis were busy eating and flying around the small apartment. I know it's a long shot, but I've got to try. Alex, using Burrow, we can go back in time. Marinette's bluebell eyes looked fiery underneath her thick bangs. Why hadn't she thought of it sooner? And why had no one suggested it sooner? Grief would do strange things to her mind, but now she had a plan. Or, well, at least the beginnings of a plan. Duh, isn't that obvious? Alex responded flippantly. Marinette pulled at some loose strands of her hair in frustration. No one was taking this seriously. Don't you get it? We have a way to save Adrien! Why would I not try anything to bring him back? Marinette stood from her chair, leaning over the table, her eyes filled with tears. Alex and Alia exchanged glances, sadness in their eyes. Yeah, I guess, but what if it doesn't work? I'm not banking on any what-ifs. This has to work. Adrien can't just be gone. Marinette fell back into her seat, looking distraught. The girls hated seeing their friend like this. Adrien's death had been hard on all of Paris, but while the world had seemed to move on, Marinette couldn't. Ever. Especially when there was a way to fix everything. She had to try. If she didn't, she'd never forgive herself. Alia went to her best friend's side, pulling her into a hug, stroking her hair. What's the plan? Are you going to visit him in jail and what? Confront him? Alia's voice was gentle. Her heart ached for Marinette. Marinette sat up, wiping her eyes. I think that's my only option. Girl, we've got your back. Alia smiled at her, and Alex, now sitting up in her chair, nodded. Marinette smiled wearily, holding up a hand. No. I've got to do this on my own. I have to talk to Gabriel Agreste. I have to talk to Hawkmoth. Chapter 6. Marinette's eyes fluttered open after yet another sleepless night, hair sticking to her cheeks after all of the tears she cried the night prior. Just when she thought things were getting better, her heart fools her. Her sweeter-than-a-macaroon Kwami flitted to her side and stroked the hair from her owner's face. Are you really going through with it, Marinette? Concern flashed across Tiki's small face. Right. Today he was visiting Gabriel Agreste. Today he would finally get some answers. Yes. I have to find out why. I have to find a way to fix this, and to do that, I'll need his help. Marinette's face was one of defeat as she nuzzled Tiki further into her cheek, gently hugging the small creature. Then the duo heard a small yawn from the dollhouse placed on Marinette's bedside table.
Do you want me to give him a cataclysm?
Plag came forth, stretching his tiny arms, blindly reaching for his camembert stash as his eyes squinted with exhaustion. Marinette gave a breathless laugh. No, Plag. I'm going to try this my way. You know, with words. She tickled the Kwame's belly as he stuffed his face.
All right, well, just let me know. He won't know what hit him.
This time her laugh was more genuine. She rolled her eyes. Okay, sure thing. Tiki, you ready? Her little bug nodded fiercely. Ladybug approached the vast prison that loomed over her, a prison of secrets and sorrow. She entered the high-security building. At the counter sat an overworked prison guard, drinking coffee with his eyes closed. Was he sleeping? Regardless, Ladybug timidly walked up to the half-asleep man, wringing her hands. Excuse me? The man shot out of his seat, eyes popping out of their sockets. Sir, yes, sir! Sorry, Ladybug. His rigid posture relaxed as he rubbed the back of his neck nervously. What can I do for you? I'd like to speak to Gabriel Agreste, please. She attempted to stay cool, but her voice sounded hoarse, probably because of all the tears she had cried lately. The man scrutinized her face, searching every inch of it. Are you sure? His voice was soft, eyebrows furrowed. There was a sadness in his eyes. He must know what happened. That's always what this pitying look meant. Yes, I'm sure. She chewed on her bottom lip that was already chapped. I'll go get him. He'll be installed too. Ladybug thanked him and walked in the direction the guard pointed, finding a small booth with an equally small stool. A glass wall broke the distance between herself and where an inmate would be. A phone a couple of decades old sat on the wall. She took a seat, waiting patiently for Mr. Agreste. Well, she looked patient on the outside. Inside, she just wanted to get this over with. She wanted to flee and crawl into her bed, never showing her face in public again. She hated the stares from people who once regarded her as a great hero. Now they looked at her with pity. Poor Ladybug, they said. Her husband was killed by his father's hands. Talented model killed violently. Headlines on the street read, Ladybug, where is she now? This was the last thing she needed, adding to her anxiety by the prying stares of people who longed to ask her questions about her loss, but knew better than to do so. Then she saw the person she hated most in the universe. But this time, he looked like an actual person. There was no suit, no perfectly coiffed hair. He was but a shell of the man he once was. He walked in wearing a dingy white t-shirt and blue jeans. He appeared as if he had recently cried. Even though he was a villain to his very core, Ladybug somehow empathized with him. Stupid, caring heart. She knew how much she was hurting, and it only seemed to reason that he would be too, even though he caused her pain. He sat on his stool behind the glass, picking up the phone. Ladybug, what do you want? He refused to meet her eyes. He killed his son, her husband, and he couldn't Look at her. Gabriel couldn't face what he'd done. Ladybug tried not to let her anger get the best of her. But self-control was not on her side. What do I want? What do I want? I want Adrien back. So how about you stop your attitude and help me? Her voice echoed through the empty concrete hall. Other visitors stopped to stare, meeting her with a look of annoyance at her outburst. Her face turned pink beneath her mask as she shifted her focus back to Gabriel. Do you think I don't care? How dare you? He was my son. I love him. I wish I would have told him that more. I am a wretched creature. I never deserved a love as pure as Adrien, as pure as Emily. And now I've lost them both. His glasses fogged up from fresh tears. Ladybug almost felt bad for him. She's never seen Gabriel aggressed, distraught, or remorseful about anything. Not when he got caught ripping off someone else's designs. Not even when he got found out as Moth. And not when he killed his son. Ladybug softened her gaze. That's why I'm here, Mr. Agreste. I have a plan to save Adrien, but I can't pull it off without you. But I'm in here. How could I possibly help you? First, can I trust you? His eyes finally met her steely stare. She knew the knee-jerk reaction of the question should be no. But she asked nevertheless. Pardon? He asked with confusion. Can I trust you? She bellowed, then spoke in a hushed tone. I'm going to get you out of here. I need to trust you, but you need to trust me. This is the only way it's going to work. You're going to do everything I say when I say it. You can't be the stubborn man you've always been. Gabriel clicked his tongue, but nodded begrudgingly, arms crossed. And how do you plan to do this? He looked at her skeptically. Let's just say Pegabug has this covered. Be ready. We're going to save Adrien. I promise. Thank you so much for listening. I really, really hope you enjoyed all 6 chapters of A Miraculous Search. There are more to come. I just wanted to get this out, and if you guys hadn't watched it, maybe get you up to speed. If you enjoyed it, let me know what you thought, opinions, what do you think is happening next? As always, stay miraculous!